Hello, everyone, and welcome to this IFCU Forum on the EdTech sector, co-organized by the International Federation of Catholic Universities and EdTech France. I'm Corinne Melul. I'm head of the Foresight unit at IFCU, and I want to thank all of our audience members from across the world for joining us today. The context of the talks we're going to have in this event is, of course, the vast transformations that the higher education sector has been going through over roughly the past decade, a little bit more depending on what region in the world, in particular under the impact of the penetration of artificial intelligence, big data, and our focus today, the EdTech industry. In other words, the tools, the pedagogical approaches of education technology that are already deeply altering teaching and learning practices at higher education level. These trends have been underway for quite some time across many universities worldwide indeed, but they have undoubtedly been accelerated by the COVID-19 pandemic and the massive move the pandemic has prompted to online learning within literally a matter of days or weeks at the onset of the crisis last year. On a broader level, these changes are also happening at a time when the very mission of universities is being questioned, from the time-old objectives to focus on the transmission of knowledge, the production of scientific research, to a more acute imperative now to impart skills that can guarantee the employability of students once they graduate in a labor market that is itself undergoing multiple transformations under the impact of technology, not to mention other large trends that are even more disruptive, such as the unbundling of higher education or the rise of micro-credentials, the development of the concept of lifelong learning, etc. The EdTech sector is, of course, a major player in these transformations, which provide an ever-growing market for EdTech companies. EdTech products are not only prompting this revolution in learning and teaching, but they're also increasingly prescribing what is worthy of being taught and learned. One example, which one of our roundtables today will focus on, is the rising value of the so-called soft skills that allow students to acquire a set of skills that are said to be transferable from one job to the next in a labor market where the very notion of a stable, active lifetime career is itself disappearing. Given all this, our goal at the International Federation of Catholic Universities is to engage in a dialogue we hope will be fruitful with EdTech France, an organization that federates the major corporate players in the EdTech sector at national level. We hope that by discussing these major transformations together, by sharing our respective domains of expertise, we can bring valuable insights to our members and to our larger audiences on the current state, and perhaps more emphatically on the future of higher education altogether. I want to now thank all of our EdTech panelists for joining us today in this first event of what should be a series of joint initiatives. And I will now leave the floor to Anne-Charlotte Moneret, who is the General Delegate of EdTech France, and then to Marie-Christine Levet, the founder of EduCapital, which is a major European EdTech venture capital fund, so they can introduce their domain of expertise and the substance of our debates for today. Anne-Charlotte, floor is yours.
Thank you, Corinne, for this brilliant introduction. I'm very thankful to you, François and Nicolas, for this opportunity to discuss together the future of education and also to look at the past together with entrepreneurs and university at the same time, which is not happening very often. So I'm very grateful for that, and I hope everyone will get on board. And please don't hesitate to write questions in the chat if you have. I'm leading the network of EdTech company in France that is called EdTech France. So I'm going to share with you a few words on this organization. So we have been created in May 2018, and now we are gathering more than 350 EdTech companies. So it's growing super fast, and not only because of COVID, also because the education and the lifelong learning is evolving everywhere around the world. So we really have a good view on what's happening in the French EdTech sector at EdTech France. Because of our size, we are having more than 350 members. So we really have a good view on the diversity of the ecosystem. And you're going to meet some of our members later today. What I would like to share with you is that we are not only EdTech startups today in France, we really have a big scale up, big companies that have been growing during the past 5 years, maybe sometimes 10 years for some of them. We have French champions that are going abroad. Some of them are working with universities that are members of the FIUC. And I think it's really important to insist on that, because EdTech, it's not only startups, it's also companies that are growing very fast and will keep growing this year and next year. And if I focus on the French ecosystem, we are gathering companies that are working on the higher ed markets, of course. That's why we are here today, but also on the K-12 markets and on the lifelong learning markets. And we have a very dynamic ecosystem in France, like really dynamic, with a lot of companies creation. And we are also close from the research environment in France, mainly on the machine learning area and on the neuroscience subject. And also we have a big way of growing outside of France, thanks to the French language. So mainly in Canada and in French-speaking countries in Africa. So most of our companies are trying to go abroad at a pretty early stage in their development. And of course, we have been growing very fast over this past 12 months. Marie-Christine will share with you some great numbers on the market. And I would like to stress on one thing. First one is that we really have like companies that are selling products and services that are on a very wide range of products. So every university, every business school will find what it will looking for. Sorry. So we really have a diversity of product and services, and they are growing very fast, and they are trying to work with university and with a business school together in order to better understand what your needs are. So I hope the panel of today will be very rich for everyone in order to move forward together in the future years. Sorry. Thank you, everyone. Marie-Christine, I will let you share some numbers on the French market and maybe also in the global EdTech market. And I'm sure you will do that better than me. So thank you, everyone. And please become close to EdTech France if you have any question on what's happening in France. If you are looking for specific companies, I will be very happy to put you in touch. So please don't hesitate to connect with me on LinkedIn or whatever. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. Thanks, Anne-Charlotte. So Marie-Christine Levet. So I'm the co-founder of EduCapital. EduCapital is a fund based in France, but covering European EdTech. We invest in startups that reinvent the future of education from little childhood up to corporate learning, and we cover higher ed, as we have 5 of our 17 investments are in the higher ed areas, and you will see Victor that I see on the screen. That is one of EduCapital portfolio companies. So very happy to be here, because I really think that we need areas and forums where entrepreneurs, universities, teachers can share their vision of what will be the future of education and future of higher ed, because it's true that the crisis that we have all been witnessing and living in the past months has really changed the face of EdTech in the world, and I will share some figures to show you this. So if we look at the EdTech market, I try to put it bigger. So it's true that, in the last year, more than 1.7 billion students so teachers and parents have experienced EdTech products. So this has been really a catalyst on the EdTech market. We think that the EdTech market, has taken $175 billion more than it was before COVID. The EdTech market is estimated at $500 billion in 2025. The market has been accelerated 5 to 10 years, and the 2020 has been a record year for EdTech because more than $16 billion have been raised in EdTech, and it's 2 times the figures of 2019. So I think we can say that there will be a pre and post COVID in the EdTech, and I think that higher ed has really benefited a lot from this big change of adoption of products and a lot of investments in higher ed also. If you look at the global EdTech market, $500 billion in 2025, it was estimated 325 billion, pre-COVID. So you see the big impact of the COVID crisis on a still growing education market. We will need more and more education in the future, and it's true that it's interesting to see that higher ed and lifelong learning begins to merge, because people will have to retrain themselves all their lifelong, and the diploma for one's life, it's a bit finished. If you look at EdTech investment, it's a new market, EdTech, because it really started in 2015, and it's been increasing performing and over invested every year, and 2020 was a big record year for EdTech. We have now unicorns in EdTech. There are some unicorns in the higher ed area, and I'm sure these companies: Coursera, Guild Education, Chegg. There are more than 20 unicorns in EdTech in 2020, and all analysts predict that we will have more than 125 by 225. If you look at higher ed, it's interesting to see that the investment that have been really focused on higher ed, and often products attracting higher ed also work for K-12. So if you look at the world, we have had more than 44% of the investment worldwide that have been directed towards product or services for K-12 and higher ed. In the US, it's very interesting to see that the pure higher ed area is very developed. It represents 20% of all US investments. US universities have really spent a lot of money to equip themselves, and more in the last years, and we begin to have very large companies providing services, tools and content for US universities. In Europe, we are still a bit below. Higher ed represents 8% of the investment, but in total with K-12 products, we are around 42%. And for France, it's just the beginning, because France has been mainly focused in the last year in lifelong learning and corporate learning, but we think that this crisis will accelerate things, and there's a real consciousness now of everybody that they will have to invest in EdTech product. Yeah, here are some of the big companies that have raised money and that have really performed very well last year in the higher ed area. So you will see there's a lot of different products, a lot of tools and resources for universities and college to engage students, to help professors to have more interactivity with their students. There are some network that helps students, to find their next opportunity, and that links to employability. So it's a variety of different services, and for students and for universities. We are happy to be the investor of Labster. Labster has had an incredible year last year. Labster is a Danish company who provides virtual laboratories for higher ed. They're mainly selling in the US, with more than 1,500 universities that have used Labster laboratories. And this is really a product that characterizes what EdTech can bring. It's a lot of innovation on the way teachers teach. If you look at EduCapital, we receive more than 100 startups, addressing the higher ed and the K-12 market, in our deal flow. I think what is very important is that all these startups begin to have, deals, with customers, to experience their product. We have invested in 5 different companies, providing services to higher ed. AppStore, I will let Victor introduce AppStore, but we think he's in a very interesting area, which is a students' engagement. Labster, I spoke about Labster, providing, innovation in pedagogy. Differ, which is a Norway company for sort of Slack for students. We invest also in Student Pops, students jobs platform, and we just did an investment recently in Engagely, which is a Daphne Colors, so ex-Coursera founders and new ventures, with Dan Avidites, an Israeli-US company providing virtual classroom tool, because we often say it, Zoom and Microsoft are not EdTech products, even if they've been used a lot in the past months. So have a nice discussion. I think we are just at the beginning of what the future of higher ed can be, and I hope we can cooperate and bring and build a nice future for our children. And I really believe this will be made by a strong cooperation between startups, grown-ups, and universities and schools. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anne-Charlotte and Marie-Christine, for your presentations. It's time now for our first roundtable, the subject of which is what lessons to draw from the COVID-19 pandemic for edtechs in higher education, and as a consequence of the crisis in particular, what strategies to derive for universities from the crisis and the transformations engendered by the crisis. This roundtable will be moderated by my colleague, Nicolas Vergier. So Nicolas, over to you.
Thank you, Corinne. Good afternoon, all. Thank you for participating to this forum. During this first roundtable, I will be pleased to be joined by Victor Vacrenier, with the CEO of IFCU, also by Ludovic Charbonnel from Challenge Me, and John Edwin Graff from BICOM. As you all know, the impact of coronavirus on education is real, knowing that university and college campus are places where students, professors, lives and students study in close proximity to each other. They were also building cultural hub where students are brought together from nations around the world. And with this pandemic, the foundation of this ecosystem have been impacted significantly with the rapid spread of the coronavirus. So today we know that all the practices in higher education have changing regarding this mutation. So as Corinne said, at IFCU we have 2 questions to ask to the panelists, to the 3 panelists. What are the lessons that you have learned from 1 year of the COVID-19 crisis regarding your experiences, your feeling, and for you, what would be the best strategy for university in this post-COVID world? So maybe Victor can try to reply to these two questions first.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Nicolas. So I'm Victor Vacrenier, I'm a CEO of a startup based in Paris, which provides mobile campus applications, which basically translates the physical campus into a mobile application in which all the students can access, all the day-to-day services, activities, and software related to the institution. To answer your question, I don't want to sound too pretentious, considering the fact I'm 32 years old. I've been working in higher education for 7 years, so I don't think I've got anything to learn to the people listening today. But because you're asking me the question, I'll be giving you my impression, my feeling, or whatever I've been noticing during this pandemic. All right, so take it as you feel it, and I won't be blowing my horn too much, but this is what I think I've been seeing during this pandemic. There's two big lessons, I think. The first one was the perception towards digital from the higher education institution that dramatically shifted and switched from one to another, and I'll be listing right after. And the second big lesson is probably towards the investment strategy per se that the higher education institution, I wouldn't say should be following, but I believe would be a good idea to at least look at. So first thing, perception towards the digital. You had really a massive polarized ecosystem within the higher education institutions before the COVID hit. You had, like, on one side, all the institutions that believed earlier on into the digital. And these institutions that believed in the digital, maybe for pedagogy, for campus services, forever, but they invested in digital earlier on. And the thing, what happened with the COVID when it hit, even though the COVID started from east to west, it started in Asia, then went to Europe, then Africa, and then the US, but they really had the confirmation that they were heading the right way. So they've been doing massive investments, or just regular investments in digital for 5, 6, 10 years. The COVID hit, and I wouldn't say most of them were ready, to address all the topics and the stakes related to the COVID and the closures of the campuses. But at least they had a confirmation that they were right. They were right investing in digital, and they kind of had a head start during the COVID. And simple example: all the institutions that already invested into online classes, when the COVID hit and the campuses closed, well, they were somehow ready, to operate in a remote way. Whereas on the very other side of the spectrum, you had all the institutions that kind of had a dogmatic position or attitude toward digital, which for some of them were, we don't really believe in digital. Our historical mission is to teach. We don't need digital. We don't need digital software or tools. So we'll just keep operating our institution the same way that we've been doing for the last 100, 200, 300 years. And these institutions particularly, they kind of had the realization because of the COVID that they cannot operate without digital no more, which for some of them was really, was really hard, if I can put it in simple words. It was, really the realization that we just can't operate without it anymore. So we really have to invest right now as soon as possible. And this is, for me, the first big lesson that happened during COVID. If you had invested in digital a year on, well, you had a head start and you were going the right way. But if you didn't really invest it or trust or push toward digital, you were in maybe a lot more troubles that all the other institutions already were with the COVID. So that was the first big lesson. The second big lesson was, and again, it's my opinion, so take it as it comes, but it's in terms of investment strategies. I think there's like two sides to see on this topic. The first one is you need to diversify your investments in EdTech and in digital in general. And also you might want to look into, student-oriented solutions. So again, I might be blowing my own horn here because we're providing with a mobile app for students and our clients are higher education institutions, but we're working with 100-ish institutions in 6 countries right now. So hopefully I got a pretty decent overview and standpoint about what's happening. And this strategy, we really saw it with both, let's call it the COVID waves, even though you in your country had or had not, specific lockdown periods. I'm thinking, for example, Australia, they really went to really, really long lockdown, whereas in France, we had 2 separate lockdowns. But in general, Q1, Q2, 2020, so first semester of 2020, every higher education institution was like, we need to invest really fast, really, intensively into online classes, because we need to make sure that our students are still learning and that we're still fulfilling our missions to teach and to provide these students with an education. That's really what happened during the first semester of 2020. But what happened, and it was really a change of a stance, I would say, with the second lockdown we had in France, but which is somehow end of 2020 or the second semester of 2020, is the following. Most of the higher education institutions that had the investment required could operate remotely. So they were having the same classes, somehow the same value transmitted to students. But then they realized, well, is that enough? And as dramatic as it is, we in France learned it the hard way, because we had some students committing suicide, and when some students I don't know exact translation for that, but they were turning in a personal situation was really rough. No money to live, no money to pay the rent or to eat. And the thing is, many institutions realize it's not enough just to invest on just having the classes online. It's not really about the operating remotely. It's about the student experience. And this is a very important topic that higher education institutions need to address in the digital investment strategies, is how effective are we in terms of ensuring a perfect or near similar experience online and offline. And this is really something many institutions, at least in France, realized during the second lockdown and or the second COVID wave, which was end of 2020 in France, was that, okay, we need to invest more, we need to diversify our investment, and we need to provide students with more experience, even though they can come to the campus, or even though they will probably stay in their home countries because they can't travel anymore. Or can we make sure that they have the same experience? And for that matter, and this is going to be the only 25-second sales pitch I'm going to do, in this context, having a mobile app, I would love to tell you this is the all-time solution, but we're just part of the solution. Providing your students with a mobile app to make sure that you can communicate with them, they can interact with each other, is a part of the solution. But then you need to provide solutions to interact within the classroom. You need to provide solutions to interact with the teachers, and all the stuff that hopefully will, kind of help the students feel less alone, feel less isolated, even though they're not on the campus, physically speaking. So 2 big lessons: perceptions toward digital. You need to invest in digital. You can't do it without it no more. And other big lesson: your investment strategy in digital needs to address diversification of the solution you provide. Also, you need to specifically focus on student-oriented solution to provide them with a good experience. And that's it for me. That was a bit long, but hopefully it was clear enough.
Thank you for these witnesses. Ludovic, do you share the same observation after months and months of lockdown in different countries, which has impacted the life of the campus and the students also?
Yes, for sure. Thank you for the invitation. I'm really glad to be here. Sorry for my English, it's a bit rusty. So my name is Ludovic Charbonnel. I'm the co-founder of Challenge Me, a peer learning and grading solution created in 2015. Our solution is really used by university and business school like Schema, IEM Lyon, University of Montpellier, University of Toulouse. Our mission is to help teachers to build peer activities with an easy and flexible solution. We help them with a really easy to use tool because we think it's really important to have really something easy to use by teachers. So we can provide activities like peer evaluation, intra-group grading, cross-review grading, this kind of stuff. So we share some insights received during the COVID crisis. We really observed 3 stages for our schools. First, it was like we call the panic stages. So every school need a video conference tools. They try to replicate what they do in face-to-face. So it was really, yeah, what we call a panic thing, because it was crazy. You know, I think the lockdown was announced 2 days or 3 days before the lockdown. So it was really crazy for them, crazy for teachers, you know, to replicate courses that they do in face-to-face to something digital. So it was really difficult for us. And for us, it's why all the project that we built with the school was really put in standby. The second stage was more about, you know, school observing a big drop in student engagement. So their goal was really to find synchronous solution to engage students. So for us, it was very interesting because we built our solution as an asynchronous solution, but we saw that peer grading, peer review work also in synchronous situation. So as an example, I can share what we've done with Toulouse University. They engage students when they are in Zoom session. Every student have to present something, and the other students have to listen and to rate the presentation. So it was very interesting for us. The first stage really start, I think, few weeks ago, few months ago. No schools need to build, you know, pedagogical sequences in collaboration with us. It's really interesting to work with school to build this kind of innovative sequence with synchronous and asynchronous activities. We observed that peer review, peer grading is really one of the best activities to engage students for a long period. And build this kind of solution, this kind of activities with school is really a new use cases for us, because we know we build something for them, but we understand that we need to adapt the solution. We need to adapt the feature. We need to adapt the scenario to really have something that can help them to build innovative activities. So one example is that we build with Schema. They need innovative way to prepare students to the Taj exam. So we adapt the platform and they build really a very innovative sequence around peer review and peer grading. So for us, it's really a new use cases that is very interesting to share with other schools to build interactive and innovative courses. Maybe a few words about hybrid courses, because teachers told us that it was very, very difficult for them and not very efficient. Doing courses with 5 students in face-to-face and 20 others by a video call is very annoying and not very efficient. So I think my co-host will develop more this kind of problematic, but yeah, it was a surprise for us that teachers told that, yeah, hybrid is not a good way to solve this kind of thing. So maybe have, you know, 100% face-to-face or 100% digital way, but hybrid solution was very difficult for them. So I finished, it was short, but thank you for your time, and don't hesitate if you have any question.
Thank you, Ludovic, for your observation. And I would like now to give the floor to John Edwin Graff, CEO of Become. And I would like to ask you, from your side, from your personal perspective and opinion, what were the lessons learned during this COVID-19 period, and what will be for you the good strategy that university can implement?
Yes, with pleasure, Nicolas. Thank you. Thank you for having us on stage with you today. I will share some slides if I can. And I can. It's marvelous, and it's working. Yes. So do you see my screen now? Yes.
Yep.
Okay, great. Yes. Yes. So hi everybody. I'm John Edwin Graff. I'm a founder and CEO of Become. So we are developing two platforms just to let you know what we're doing. The first one is Become, and the second one is Memory. So Become, sorry, is a new generation learning environment that's let the students, the learners, and the teachers communicate and collaborate together. It includes also a virtual classroom module that is really integrated inside the platform. The teachers can do the distance learning, but not also only with the classroom module, but before, during, and after the lesson. That is really important, because teaching is not only video conferencing. And a big topic for Become also is the centralization of the different tools that are already used inside the institutions. For example, the LMS, the soft skills software, the evaluation, the courses, etc., etc. So a huge work with the interoperability through SSO, APIs, etc. So a big stack of interoperability. And globally, it's the improvement of the quality of the learner and teacher experience, which is really important. Not just now, but it's coming more and more important. The second tool we're developing is Memory. It's a digital library of the institutions, of the projects. So it's a project oriented platform that can value your learners' creation thanks to artificial intelligence. It's a marketing tool that is built for the institution to showcase the projects inside the institutions, of course, but also outside the walls of the institutions on the networks. And it's also an intelligent search engine. So you can filter, you can search through massive lots of tons of projects. You can filter and search projects through colors, through forms, through attitudes, through every tags that are built inside the platform automatically. From two different parts. The first one is what we saw from last year on the user experience with our clients, and maybe in three different parts from the beginning of the pandemic. So from March 2020, of course, I'm totally aligned of what Victor said, and Ludovic. Institutions had urgent needs at different levels, different speeds. So they took quick decisions. So sometimes very quick decisions with lots of impact. And sometimes for palliative uses, I think mainly about video conferences, about choosing one or different tools without knowing what would be possible to do from now and in the future, and if it's according to their specific needs. So we saw an increase, a very big increase of the needs in multiple platforms, not also about video conferencing, but mainly, but not only. During the second part, from September, the second half of the year 2020, they realized also that urgent the needs on the pedagogy. So they have to adapt the pedagogy of using these different tools in a synchronous way in distance, for example, with the virtual classroom or the video conferencing, but also to make more interactions. And of course, a PDF of 30-40 slides is not the same way to teach, to showcase the material online with everybody at home. It's not the same way in four walls in a classroom. Also, the users ask also for better connections with the tools. They use many and more tools. So they were asking also for better connections with the tools. And it's very normal to see if there can be integrated, or it's more useful to get more integration. The desire to innovate more, and I put innovate in brackets because there is still lots of things to do, but the desire to innovate was already there. But was it possible because so many lines have moved in the institutions? But the desire was more and more present. And also the desire to create hybrid courses, like Ludovic mentioned just before. And I think it's only the start because it's very complex, but I will be speaking about that just after. And what we see in the close future, for maybe this year after summer, a very big focus on adaptive learning, very the strong desire to adapt the courses in a hybrid way, which is really complex because it involves many aspects so different. About the technique, about the psychology, etc., and the usage of the platforms, and a greater awareness of human and psychology. We are talking more about platforms and techniques, but the human aspect and the psychological aspects of the students are really important. They were really impacted of the crisis last year and still now. Victor mentioned it, and it's very important to take that in part. I agree, we are part of the solution, of the improvement of the ecosystem, but we are not alone, and we have to collaborate together, and everything has to be related and interconnected. And now the interoperability subjects is tended to be a requirement to use that tool or that specific tool. And now we are using so many tools, so now we have to think to connect all these tools, because so many password, login, etc., and not also that, but also maybe the datas that are spread along the many platforms. So all this data spreading area has to be collected and put together in a single server to analyze it, to make better actions for the students. For the future, I am sure we will see new proof of concept of new schools, new models, new pedagogy also. Second part, and would be the last part, the findings we saw on our side of EdTech startup. We saw we have to answer to these urgent needs in a very quick way. We saw also the usage of our existing users tenfold increase. It was really massive. So we had to take care about our infrastructure, and it was great because we didn't have problems, but it was a really hot topic. And they was asking us for more support. So before the pandemic, we were already present for the implementation, for the pedagogy, how you can use this feature, or how can you use the platform. But now it was really obvious that they needed us to make the transition more smooth, and they asked really for us. I'm speaking about the video conferencing. We were implemented in the platform just before the COVID, and they were totally, a bit lost, and they asked a lot of support. So we have to take care about them and to accompany them more clearly about the usage. So it was a great time, but it was really the panic time, and we learned a lot with them. So for September 2020, it's a huge consolidation about the digital use, the digital in general, And also for us, it was the opportunity to talk to different persons, different edtechs, companies, and beginning new partnerships that we couldn't imagine before. So it was an opportunity for us to talk to lots of people that we didn't maybe were thinking of before, or imagine that it was too hard to discuss with somebody, etc. And the walls broke a bit, so it was really nice. For the hybrid courses, we saw that no one was ready, so it was so complicated and so it improves lots of different aspects. So we were ready. We thought that we were ready. We have to go in these directions, and maybe for the future. So for our side, an acceleration, a deep acceleration on innovation. This is really clear. It's also reinforcing the inclusion, and I mean equality of the chances for lots of students socially more far from big cities or big institutions, person in situations of handicaps, and also an aspect of psychology that is really important and can be improved, and also in the numeric space. So these aspects are so multidisciplinary, so it's really complex to resolve it. It's our challenge. It's our challenge to co-build with the institutions. I think the future is, and I think it's the goal of this conference too, is to reinforce the institutions from one side with the needs, with lots of ideas, with dreams, and to make better collaboration with the edtechs, but I think maybe not also only with the edtechs, but of course with edtechs, and to co-build features, tools to fulfill the needs that we have to face too. That's it. Thanks for your attention, and have a good day, everybody. And
thank you.
The questions were there.
Thank you, Jolly-Louine. I see there is two questions. So maybe we'll start by the first one from Carlos Borges. It's a question to all three of you. What do you mean by new models during 2022? What kind of models?
Is it for me because I mentioned
it's
new
for
models
you, yes.
in my slides? Okay.
But Victor also Ludovic can reply after you.
Yeah. I think new models for the schools, for the institutions that were only inside the walls on presential way of learning, I think they can imagine hybrid teaching, and hybrid teaching has different phases. For one course during the whole year, a small part can be done in a distance way. Another part can be inside the school, but also I think the pedagogy and all the way that we monitor the lessons, that we care of the students has to be changed and adapted to these different models. So I mean, they have to invest maybe in digitalization of the courses in so many ways that everything can be done and has to be based on the specific needs, and maybe on the courses, on the material also specific to that. Victor, Ludovic?
Yeah, totally agree with you. Maybe something about, new models between the interaction between university and startups. I think that will change also. You said about co-building, and I think it will be a really a good issue to build a solution, a big solution to solve this kind of problem. So yeah, I think it's would be a new model, also interaction between startups and university or schools. I also saw a question about what do you think about the evolution of relationship between university and startups? So I think this is a good way. Something maybe I observe with our schools and university is more maybe a less interaction between university and schools. It's more like a competition. So we saw that with Schema. We build something very interesting, and I say, okay, it's very nice. You have to communicate this innovative things you build. But they say, no, it's our thing. We need to keep that until October or November, you know, to have one step ahead before the other school. So maybe we will see, you know, some new mental way between interaction between university and school. I don't know, Victor, if you agree or not.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I'll probably answer the question from Carlos, which actually echoes to the question of Anne-Charlotte, is most of your institutions been around for hundreds of years, and especially in the I don't know the pronunciation in English, the FIUC Federation, you've been around for 100 years, so you're probably not going to disappear anytime soon. So the question is indeed there's new models evolving, there's new relationship emerging between universities and startups, and new educational ventures being created, such as what Carlos is saying is his question. But the question to ask from my perspective, when I was a student 10, 15 years ago, is what's your perceived value? Or do you differentiate from these models? Students, they all go to universities for one purpose at least, which is get a job. That's the one thing. You don't go to the university just for the pleasure of it or just for the sake of it. You go there to get a job. So what are your added value compared to the new models, to the new emerging small schools, or this kind of skill schools when you just go for 6 months, you learn a skill, you get a job, and you come back every 2 to 4 years to get a new skill? That's the question you need to ask yourself, and I just can't answer it. Is it the leverage of your alumni network? Is it the quality of your learnings? It is the overall experience that you provide on your campus. But again, you've been around as a higher education institution. You've been around for hundreds of years. So I wouldn't be too afraid of these newcomers, coming with an innovative business model or innovative tuition fees or whatever, kind of bullshit the startups can come up with. And no, apologize for the startups, including myself. But again, you're a 100 years old institution. You've been doing this for hundreds of years. You know the students better than anyone else. And that kind of echoes the question of Anne-Charlotte, which is, what are the differences you feel between countries? And what do you think about the evolution of the thing is the following. There was a report that was published, I think 6 or 7 years ago, which was issued by a woman that traveled to all the continents in the world to study all the education, startups, and institutions. And the title of the report, of the executive summary, was education, its global perspective, the local insights. What it means is like a student will remain a student, okay? Maybe as a higher education institution, you will have different stakes as an American or an Australian institution, because you probably have, campuses with 60,000, 80,000 students. So you probably want to, address the onboarding of the freshmen, the onboarding of the newly enrolled students. Whereas in France, for example, you could be a public university with 5,000 students, but the perspectives are global. All right, the students, they still want to still apply to get a job. They want to get a quality education, and they want to have more digital in their day-to-day activity, because they just want to feel the same way in the campus or when they're learning as when they're just living their day-to-day life, when they're seeing their friends or with their family. They're just, they have these usage logics that they expect to find in the education. So if they're using their mobile phone on their day-to-day activities, they expect to get a mobile phone device to be used within the institution. If they are every day, getting instant news, feedbacks about whatever they're using, they expect to find the same kind of interaction within the higher education institution system and within their own scholarship, their school life, sorry. So there's, to me, in my opinion, and we have clients in Mexico, in Europe, in Northern Africa, in not Asia yet, but an Asian student is the same that an American student is the same that a French student. They have small, slight differences related to what they're learning, cultural differences, or just, you know, based on the location where they live specifically. But all in all, they're just the same. So I wouldn't be too worried about these newcomers. Just take what you can take from them. Just try to get inspired. If you think, oh, this model, maybe they're not having the student pay the tuition at the beginning of the year, but maybe they're waiting for them to get a job and they perceive like a percentage of the job. Maybe it's a good idea to take for some of your students. And also, there's no slight differences. So if you see something that's been happening in American university, I don't see no reason why you couldn't apply it, expect, you know, a business financial reason. So the sheer price of the solution. But if something is working in an American university, there's a high chance it's going to be working in a Filipino university or in a Spanish university. Students are all the same. They're 18 to 25, 30 years old. They use digital every day. They're really, you know, digital natives, and they expect at the end of their studies to get a job. That's at the end of it. And around that, maybe, yeah, sometimes you can buy some startup solutions. Maybe you can, you know, work along a startup that addresses specific pain point that you cannot solve yourself, because your primary mission is to teach, not to develop digital solutions. So of course you've got an IT services, you've got, you know, digital teams, but it's not your job. So try to see where you stand, what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses, and on some of your weaknesses, if you feel like you could partner with an EdTech startup, just go for it. And that's probably going to be my answer, which is, again, it's a super long answer. Sorry, but I try to, you know, take parts from few questions to make a big ass one answer. So that's what.
Thank you, Victor, for your enthusiasm. I think maybe we are short in time, but maybe we'll take one or two last questions. We have a question from Glenn Chatelier from Thailand. Thank you, Glenn, to being with us. Victor, Ludovic, and John Edwin, to what degree will inputs from the students of the new ways of EdTech in collaboration with startups make richer the ways of new education? What can bring the student to this new way of education?
I promise it was going to be a short answer.
Please.
Your students are your users. That's at least one thing that we know and we kind of master in the startup environment. Your users are, well, the one using your solutions. And as a higher education institution, you are not the one, in most of the case, using the end solution. So in my opinion, whatever solution you're working with, pedagogy, campus life, campus services, you know, student housing, whatever, if you're not at least asking your students what they think about the solution or what are their problems, I can't see any way where you can head the right direction. And, you know, there's this specific thing in the UK called the NSS, National Student Survey, which is a survey issued yearly among all the universities in the UK, where they just basically ask the students, how do you feel about, how satisfied are you toward your institution services, your digital services? What's your overall level of satisfaction? And I don't think there's any other Western Europe country, at least, doing this thing. And to me, it's a nonsense. It's a basic thing. So to answer your question, Glenn, well, if you're not doing it already, start asking your students how they feel about it. I've some of the students part of, you know, the product trials or the beta trials of products before they launch, or buy a EdTech solution, and you can have a huge discount if you say, I just want to buy it for just a class, just to see how it goes for like a semester or trimester, and see how it goes. Because you can't go wrong if you ask the students. If you make a poll and 80% of the students say the solution you just gave us in beta or in trial is great, if you launch it and it fails, I don't know, it's kind of nonsense to me. It should be working because 80% of the students said they were satisfied with it. So that's going to be my not so short answer.
Thank you, Victor. Maybe John Edwin and Ludovic can reply to this question. What are your views on the challenge of the business model of private university? For example, in US, the added value of campus experiences helps justifying high tuitions, students are no longer willing to pay this amount for more digital model.
Excuse me, just to butt in for a minute, Nicolas, you have up to, if I'm not mistaken, another 15 minutes for the session. So if our interlocutors want to take their time, n'est-ce pas, Victor, to answer, that we have plenty of time until the next roundtable. Just go ahead. That's all I wanted to say for now.
Ludovic, maybe you want to react regarding the business model. What?
Yeah, like Victor said, I think it can be interesting to see tuition model and new model, short training, like or US company like I don't know, Masterclass that have a new way of selling courses. I think it's difficult because in France it's the same. You said in US the added value was on the campus. I have seen a lot of business school in France that do the same, that invest in a lot of campuses, and now they invest in video, logistic video. So I think it's a tough, it's a tough period for them. We've seen a really acceleration. So digital is the way. We know that. We know that building something with digital is the way. Like Victor said, building something for students is important. The way that the new company, the new startup in the EdTech, or the new model like Masterclass or this kind of stuff, they address really the students. So I think the students is the key. Teacher is another key. Because you have to help them build something, build a scenario, because a tool is great. Use an app, use I don't know, a new tool is really cool, but we have to build something around the tool, and teacher is the key to build something about that. So I don't really answer the question about the challenge of business model in universities, because I don't have an answer on that. I don't know if Victor or Johnny Dwight have some insight to share about these business models for university and schools.
I think it's pretty hard to say, but I think the lines has to move a bit. But I don't want put my fingers in a big delay topic for the next conference, but I think we have to talk about that maybe after the conference. Well, also it's a good topic. It's a great question about private university in the US. So let's move on.
Go ahead, Victor.
No, maybe just something a little about this challenge of the business model for private universities. Students make the calculations, all right. And it is. I mean, coming from a country where public universities cost 500 euros a year, indeed, I'm probably not an expert on the topic, but if you take the US, it's probably going to be 50,000, a year. If you do 3 years, it's going to be 150. And if you earn, I don't know, 40 when you get out, and your debt capacity is 0.33%, it's going to take you 15 years to reimburse your tuition. So I think it's more about the topic of is the price you're applying worth it? And I have a story about this. We have some of our private institutions in France that are our clients, and one of them, which is a business school, and the annual tuitions are roughly 12,000 euros. They told us that they had students that calculate the total number of classes they take on a yearly basis, and then divide it by the tuition they pay. So at the end of the day, the students knows that every class he took or she took just cost him or her, I don't know, 500 euros. There is a non-negligible number of students that are doing such calculations. So my view on the challenge of the business model of private university, I don't really know. I'm not a professional in this topic, but I know for a fact that being on the student side with my company is the fact that students want to have something, worth of the money they invested in it. And seeing the number of students that dropped out of college in the US is not much of a surprise when how indebted they're going to get, after they get graduation and they made a basic calculation. They were like, there's no job. The pandemic just hit. It's a massive, apologize for the language, but it's a shitstorm. I really want to go and keep pushing for $50,000 a year to have Zoom classes for a job that's probably going to earn me in the first 3 years, $50,000 a year. That's the question the students are asking. And the conclusions that you need to take as an institution are actually up to you. But this is, as you said, students are no longer willing to pay these amounts for a mere digital model. And I think you perfectly summarized it. Yeah.
Thank you, Victor. We have one last question from Aluja Jubani from Albania. We are more or less already replied to the question, but maybe we can add some comments and observation. Do you think that this pandemic situation will contribute to a new global strategy on the future of the university?
It's more an acceleration, because I think university and business school have known for years that they have to build new strategy, and they work on that since, I don't know, 1, 2, 3, 5 years. So I think it's more like an acceleration, and maybe the one that don't have this strategy build, they build a new one, because yeah, they think that they have to build something new, and yeah, more like an acceleration for me.
Yeah, acceleration for digital, and what will and has always drive the most changes to the the higher education industry it's the students themselves. And these, so I'm completely lost in these Gen Y, Gen Z things that I absolutely don't master. I'm an IT engineer, so I'm really a down to earth guy, doing computer stuff. But the new students arriving on the market and actually arriving on your very own institutions are very, I feel, and from what our 100-ish clients are telling us, they're very different from what the previous ones were. They're really more digital. They really want it now, and they just don't want to wait. And they're expecting, more instantaneous results, instantaneous, feedbacks, and hence probably the shift that they're probably going to be, and that already started to occur, about the way you drive your classes specifically, which is something we actually don't even do with my company. But the classroom environment will have to change, because of the very fact your teachers might be the same teachers than 30 years ago, but your students are very new students. And again, echoing what I said earlier on, you just can't know what they expect if you just don't ask them the questions. So that's probably my opinion on that. But I think if Ludovic or myself, or even Corinne or Nicholas, if we had the answer of what was going to be the higher education industry in 15 years, we'll probably tell you and share it with you. But
sure,
considering it, we don't have it. At least start with from the bottom, and which is from the students. Historically, the institutions are working in a top-down approach. Or we, as an institution, we have this vision, or do we translate this vision in terms of pedagogy, or we translate this pedagogy into proper teachers and classrooms, and maybe try the bottom-up approach. What are the profiles? What are the typology of our new students? What are their expectations? What are they expecting in the classroom? What are they expecting in terms of service within the campuses? And what type of institutions do we need to be in order to answer all this triangle? Actually, this would probably be a good approach, I think. And again, you can share it all together, because you can be in Albania, in France, or in the Philippines. You're probably having the same students. They're probably, they're the same people. They have the same age. They have the same expectations. They all want to find a job, and that's it. So maybe start a bottom-up approach.
And maybe have, test and learn approach, because I think students will be, they are agree that everything cannot be great or cannot be work. So try, measure if the goal of the tool or the goal of the new scenario works with students, with teachers. Test and learn, and be agile, to try new things.
Yep.
I have a last question for Victor that I'm going to ask directly rather than via the Q&A or chat. What it seems to me that what you're describing is so student focused as to indicate perhaps in future years, even though none of us, including me, who is in foresight, can actually tell what the higher education landscape will be like in 10 or 15 years, it sounds transformative enough to indicate the beginning of an era where, to use a marketing language, higher education will be completely customer driven, right? With the idea that the end customer is the student, thus the end customer and consumer. And the question I want to ask you is whether there aren't some risks, challenges, dangers to this, in the sense that historically education, including higher education, has not been designed as a service or a product to customers, the way that a industrial company manufacturing products has been. And so we do see the transformative potential, of course. A lot of it is great. A lot of it you promote brilliantly, convincingly. Some of it is a little bit disturbing, perhaps also for members of our audience today and other players, institutional players in particular. What do you have to say to that? Something that becomes just another market.
I agree with you. It's not really something that excites me in the way you could think of it, that the higher education institutions could become kind of just another market where the students are customers. But let's face it, in a way, and again, this is my opinion, so it may be totally bullish, but if you take, let's say, the French market, because I know it pretty well, if you take 15, 20 business schools, if you take a look at the curriculums, it's basically the same things. All right, it's literally, you could be going from business school A to B to C. You'll probably be learning the very same thing. So what makes the difference? What makes the students go for the business school A or rather than the business school B? And it's everything that I was talking about, is this kind of attractiveness. Will I have as a student a sense of belong? Like, do I belong to this institution, which is so important when you want to do fundraising with your alumni? Is the campus attractive enough? Are maybe the teachers super duper qualified? And it is a reality. I believe it is a reality, and because that's a fact, you're gonna have more and more students coming into the higher education. That's, well, statistically speaking, it seems that it's been the same thing for the last 20 years. But you're gonna have the same number of higher education institutions. So there's not gonna be enough space for everyone. So there's gonna be new models developing, which was the question from Carlos earlier on. But what happens to the remaining institutions? They'll probably have to do, harder selections up front. They probably have to limit the number of students that they can apply. So you ultimately fall into this attractiveness topic. Can you make yourself as attractive as you can to this new generation of students? That can be tomorrow or in 10 years time. So I'm kind of, again, I'm not really good. I don't have much of a vision. I'm just talking about what I'm seeing now, which our students are basically hesitating between two institutions, and on what makes them to go to one rather than the other one are not the classes because they're the same. It's not the diploma because it's the same value than the other. It's just the strength of the network, the respectability of the institution. It's the attractiveness of the campus. It's maybe this specific class that they provide, which is a super innovative class. Or maybe it's just a different business model in terms of tuition, because, well, personally, I come from a low-income family. So I know for a fact that it was one of the choices that I had to make when I was going for higher education in France, which was the financial aspect of it. So maybe all the thing I just said, you could define them as, oh yeah, higher education institution is just going to become another market when the students are the customers. Or you can just take it as it's an evolution of the model. You're still an institution, you're still training students to become the better version of themselves and find their dream job. maybe in this for that matter, you need to adapt to this new generation of students. And indeed, you're right, Corinne, this new generation of students seems to be more keen on, expecting higher value, higher standard in terms of services than the previous student that was just going to the institution because it was the most prestigious one. So I believe it's just the way students are now addressing and the perception they have towards the future and their education. That's the way it is.
Thank you.
Thank you, Victor. Thank you, John Edwin, and thank you, Ludovic, for your observations. We have replied to all the questions, and that's very good that we generate question and commentaries. Now I will give the floor to Corinne for the second roundtable.